This will be the Q&A section. First of all, may I invite Professor Helen Mun, Mr. David Leung, our Deputy Secretary General, and Ms. Prudence Lee, our Assistant Secretary General, to the stage. May I now know, is there any questions from the floor?
So just to warm up, I think there are a few points that I'd like to bring forth to your attention. So in the 2018-19 exercise, there will be a studentship that will be offered. So this is a studentship for full-time undergraduate students, and it aims to provide research experience for undergraduates and a channel for institutions to identify supporting staff for the funded project. And the studentship is at a monthly allowance of up to $2,500 for a maximum of 10 months for each project, and it will be provided to full-time undergraduate students for their participation in the FDS research projects. So I think that's a new initiative that is intended to not only help our faculty members find manpower to support their project, but also to engage your students, your undergraduate students in the research, and it's a valuable learning experience for them as well. Another thing, I think Fanny also helped me highlight, it's very important that you be aware of the teaching relief under FDS. So we note that for local self-financing degree awarding institutions, the faculty members have a heavier teaching load than those of the UGC sector. So you are very much encouraged to apply for teaching relief. And you must budget that in. If you don't budget it, we're not able to fund you. And for this upcoming exercise, the teaching relief has been increased to $43,000 per course and up to 2 courses per year. So that is a rather generous offering. And of course, the teaching relief, granting of the teaching relief also is assessed. So sometimes the panel will look into whether at the initial stage of the project, whether the research has geared up enough momentum that merits justifies teaching relief. So that is also taken into account, right? But anyway, if in doubt, do apply for teaching relief and it will be assessed. And as I said, if you don't have that entry in your budget, then even if the panel members are very sympathetic of your teaching load, they are unable to grant you the teaching relief. Another point, this is the third and last point I wish to make, is the collaboration with other institutions and in sharing resources. So in-depth collaboration with other institutions, not only UGC-funded institutions, but also overseas institutions. So both local and international. So I think Alex mentioned that too, right? Just think about, open your mind and look for good collaborators. It is strongly encouraged because it creates critical mass in the self-funded institutions. And the collaboration may be in the form of research projects or research facilities or equipment that is supported by the 3 funding schemes. Because of the small scale of the some of the self-funded institutions, sharing of infrastructure of equipment are highly recommended, and the self-funded institutions should introduce mechanisms on how to share the use of the equipment and formulate guidelines on the detailed arrangements. So if you happen to be purchasing, let's say, a large equipment, and it may be underutilized if it is only housed in your single, your individual institution, then you may wish to think about sharing with other institutions, and think about perhaps even a cost payment model, like a business model of pay-per-use or whatnot. Because sometimes if we see the request for a certain equipment from a particular proposal, and we see the same, and that must be oftentimes large equipment that's expensive, right? So if we grant an expensive equipment and we know that it's only used for one project in one institution, that means that equipment is vastly underutilized. It's rather difficult for us to justify granting so much money for that equipment. However, if the proposal comes in with a model, I mean, we're talking about shared economy, right? That's another trendy area nowadays, right? So if there's a model of sharing, then it's much easier to justify granting that fund for the purchase of the equipment. Okay, so so I will again open up to the floor, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes, yes, please.
I understand that RGCA actually encourages us to apply for teaching relief and also conference grant. But I wish to share with you one example that my colleague had last year. He has successfully got the research grant, FDS, but he didn't get any teaching relief, although he sort of put down some justification. And he also didn't get a single penny for conference grant. That's quite a surprise to us. And he did put down what are the possible conferences that he's going to attend. So I wish to know more so that we could avoid this to happen again.
So thank you for the question. And in fact, my colleague Prudence remembered the case. So basically what happened is when a proposal is assessed, the reviewers are also, the readers also asked to, in fact, itemize and say, for this item, how much funding would you recommend? And for every item, the reader has to fill in some funding level. And I think in that case, according to Prudence, the reader wrote, so that's not only itemized, the total sum also needs to commensurate with the quality of the proposal, right? So the reader was trying to make that decision, and somehow it was cut, the two items were cut. However, it is possible for the applicant to submit a budget revision form. So the total money, the total funding will remain unchanged, but the itemization can be revised if he or she submits a budget revision. And in fact, Prudence just looked up. I think your colleague has been asked to submit a budget revision form, and it has been approved already. So the total funding, yeah, so it turned out that for that proposal, when the readers decided on the funding level, aside from the total sum, he also had to fill in the itemized sums, and he just took out those two items because he specified that. So that was how the project was funded, and I think it cut the conference and as you said, it cut the conference and the teaching relief. But now the budget revision has been approved. So be aware of, it's possible to apply for budget revision as your project proceeds, because sometimes it is when you were writing the proposal, you may not foresee a lot of the changes. Maybe costs come down for certain items, the cost went up for other items, so you can probably move your funding around the different items, and it's possible to put in change requests and budget revision requests. Yeah, thank you.
May I ask two questions concerning, because the humanities and literature, and I would like to ask, the first question is how to justify or measures the impact of literature or linguistics on Hong Kong or related to society, especially those classics literature. The impact is quite invisible and long-term, maybe sometimes spiritual, and then we don't know how to say its impact on the society and also related to Hong Kong. And the second question is how to measure the personal academic record. For example, is it based on the journal the journal publications on the referees journals? That means the our academic papers on various journals, or the reputed publications can be counted? That is 2 questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So in general, we have a pool of reviewers for every discipline. So if you're talking about the linguistics discipline and the classical literature, there is a group of very seasoned and experienced reviewers who can offer their expertise in judging the quality of your proposal, especially also the quality of the track record of the PI, because that comes in from the CV, from the CV that is submitted. So in that sense, in fact, it doesn't matter what discipline, okay? Because we do have a pool of reviewers, and this pool of reviewers cover all the disciplines, and there's a what do you call it? The code. So there's like, the subject code, right? So for every subject code that is in the guidelines, there will be reviewers for those, right? So for any discipline, they look at the PI's track record based on the submitted CV. So any experience, even if you have taught a course, relating to a certain subject, if you have published papers or books, I think any scholarly outputs, all that should be entered into the CV. So it's not just whatever you consider to be reputable journals, because I'm not familiar with your field, but people in your field will know what are the reputable journals in your field. But they will also look at other research outputs. I think I don't know, there might be other, so for example, in engineering, you don't see books that much. You see a lot of papers. But I think in humanities, you see books, right? So it varies from one field to another, but the process remains consistent. The international reviewers, they all have the expertise for that discipline, and they will judge the scholarly works. They will judge the idea of the proposal. And when I say relevance to Hong Kong, it doesn't mean that it has to be applied in Hong Kong, because academic merit is academic merit. It does not, sometimes it's not constrained geographically to Hong Kong. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Huang from Chihoi College, and I have 4 questions for you. Number 1 is that does the budget that we ask for, the amount of budget we ask for, affects our chance of getting the fund or not? In other words, if I ask for a higher budget, would that reduce my chance of getting the grant? No. Okay. Second question is that in my last year's submission, there were 4 reviewers. 2 had supported funding and 2 had rejected funding. And in a summary, and the outcome is that application was rejected. And in the summary has almost fully relied on the reviewers who had rejected my application. And it had said nothing about the comments on the reviewers who had supported my application. And why is that so?
Yeah.
And sorry, and then the number of reviewers is even number. And why is it an even number? I mean, isn't it odd number better?
So thank you for the question. So first of all, as I say, the total funding that's requested is not considered as is. So in fact, the proposal is evaluated in a holistic sense. We want to look at whether there's a clear pathway from proposing the problem you're solving towards designing a methodology that moves you to the desired outcome. Okay, and as I said, if you're able to think through this problem clearly, basically the methodology and the supporting resources, which means the funding, will just fall into place. So So in fact, in terms of feasibility, if you are proposing an ambitious project, ambitious but feasible project, but you're asking for minuscule money, that's not a good proposal, right? Because it seems that maybe the PI doesn't have a good sense of how much funding is needed to accomplish the task. So it's not about just looking at the lump sum. It's about what the proposals say this lump sum comes from, right? From which item of the research, right? And the lump sum also comes with the timeline. So at the timeline, what are the tasks you will solve along this timeline, and how much funding you need to support every task. Now, about reviewers, that's actually picking, we never pick an even number of reviewers. It doesn't happen that way. A proposal, when it's submitted, we actually don't control the number of reviewers. The way we do it is we give it out to more reviewers in order to ensure that we will have enough returning reviews. Okay, so I think in general, you know, for example, if a proposal is, so we have this expert group of reviewers. If there's a proposal that doesn't excite a reviewer enough to provide a review, and sometimes it's, I must say, there are indications that if a proposal just lacks reviewers, even though time and again, you know, we send out the first wave, nobody respond. We send it out again to a second wave, nobody respond. You can think about that situation, which sometimes occur. That may be because the proposal is not of sufficient quality, and maybe the reviewers are reluctant, right, to return the review. But anyway, so basically what I want to say is there's no direct control on the number of the reviewers, but we want to get enough reviewers, review comments back. I guess in your case, it just happens that we have 4. But having said that, when the two readers read those 4 review comments, as well as they also read the proposal, okay, the 2 readers of your proposal. So the readers, for that matter, they also serve in the panel. So they read, so the panel members are readers of, so every proposal have readers. The readers also look at the review comments that come back. So in fact, it's not just 4 people who have looked at your proposal. There are 6 people. In your case, if you got 4 external reviews, there are 2 readers. There are 6 people who have read your proposal. And furthermore, between the first and the second reader, they have, among themselves, come up with some decision, okay, some assessment of your proposal. So in fact, oftentimes, that's why I wanted to, this is a good question because it gives me a chance to tell you a bit about the details of the internal process. It's not about, okay, you know, out of 4, what is the majority? It's 2 against 2, so is it a flip of a coin? It's not. So at the panel meeting, we actually spend a long time, a long day going through all the proposals. And especially for the borderline cases, there oftentimes is a lot of discussion. So when you actually have a 50-50, it seems to you it's a 50-50, but in fact, there are addition on top of those 4 review comments, there are 2 more readers who have amongst themselves discussed. And not only that, at the panel, we actually look at all the similarly assessed proposals. And as you may imagine, if we sum up all the submitted proposals and all the funding that's requested for a year, it is way more than the funding that is available, plus at a certain cutoff in the threshold of the quality. So I guess, well, unfortunately, your proposal is not funded during the past exercise, but I hope the review comments, especially given that you have 4 sets of review comments, and if the 2 readers think that those are good coverage of what needs to be done, then it will help you to improve your proposal and resubmit. And if you should resubmit this proposal, make sure that you lay out what has been changed. You know, oftentimes there's a section in the template that asks you whether it's a resubmitted proposal, and if so, what were the comments, especially the weaknesses, right? What were the comments in the last set of reviews? What are the comments, and have you addressed them in this current submission, right? So that, if you can articulate that, it will work in favor towards your proposal, because make good use of those review comments. Yeah.
Sorry, one more question. Actually, I fill in, a column was filled in wrongly, actually, and marks was deducted. And end up I only got 3.5 marks. So I wonder how many marks was deducted from filling in the form wrongly.
No, no
Yes.
marks is deducted from
It was stated in the review reports here, and it says that non-disclosure of unsuccessful proposals in the past. And undisclosure of.
Well, we actually don't have, this is not a test, right? So we don't deduct marks if you, if you fill in the form wrong, yeah. Yes, please.
To follow up on the resubmission, okay. Now, suppose under the guideline of the last reviewers, I did some kind of revision. It's almost to the completion of the project. Now, should I submit a proposal? Because probably I get the answer already. Of course, waiting for paper submission or journal publication or something like that. I still need some money for that purpose. So should I submit a proposal in that case?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm actually very happy you asked this question. Now, a proposal needs to spell out what is the problem that you're solving. If you've already solved it, then there's no reason why you're asking for funding for it, right? So if you are asking, if last year you had a proposal, you laid out a problem, and for various reasons, the reviewers feel that there are certain weaknesses in it, and then they did not fund you. But since then, you found other means to solve that problem. Then so the problem is solved. So you no longer have the problem.
I have a problem getting money to publish. In my area, it costs a lot of money to publish a paper, unlike the other areas.
Yeah. So if it's just publication costs, that's not a research problem, unfortunately, right? Well, if you're no longer, so research is often an exercise. The reason why it's called research, because there's the which means when you have solved a problem to a certain extent, it actually opens up other problems to solve, right? So I think if you want to continue to submit another proposal, it has to be a research proposal. So you can't just ask for publication costs. That you have to be very careful about that, because if, let's say, you ask for a proposal, I think a typical funding level would be like 6 digits or something for FDS. And once it's funded, or even before the start date of your proposal, you already have a paper submitted. Now that calls for some attention, right? So the attention is, in fact, other people, the auditors will ask RGC, why are you funding a project with the start date of, I don't know, January 2018, and this project lays out a problem for which there is already a solution, and the PI submitted a paper before January 2018.
No,
right?
I of course, if I write a proposal, all the paper deliverables will be after the proposal get approved. Then I kind of work out the deliverables. But I mean, again, I just want to make my point clear that if I have a solution, I got the solution. I mean, since my last submission, would I resubmit?
Okay, so let me try to so thank you for the elaboration. Now, whether you should resubmit or not depends on what are you asking for. Let's say you have a solution, but it's a theoretical solution, okay? And you need manpower to implement that theoretical solution so that you have a demonstrable.
That is a theoretical paper.
But it's
The paper is a theoretical paper. I'm working on theory.
And your proposal is a theoretical proposal? So then the question is, if you already have a solution, so what problem are you solving? Why do you need money to solve the problem if you have already solved it? So basically, it's the PI's it's the PI's responsibility. If you say, I mean, if you already have the solution and you say, well, in my proposal, I'm asking for another 24 months of RA, manpower to solve this problem, but you've already solved it. So what? So that's where the problem is. Yeah.
Hi, thanks a lot for doing this, running this workshop to. You hear me? Hi, thanks a lot for running this workshop to encourage us to ask for money. I have a question about IDS that was not mentioned today, and I wonder if you can share with us some of the expectations with regards to IDS. In particular, I would like to find out if chances would be higher if we don't just talk about creating research capabilities, but also demonstrate through one or two major projects in the proposal how these such research capabilities can be utilized. And if that is acceptable, whether the funds can be used to hire RAs. And thirdly, what kind of deliverables will be expected for such projects? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we had a workshop 2 days ago on IDS. And so IDS is a very special type of grant that is created for the self-funded sector. So if you look at the guidelines for IDS and look at the rationale for the IDS grant, it is to create research capacity in a self-funded institution. So with that, we need to bear in mind, we're talking about research capacity. We're not talking about a research problem. So it's not a research project per se. It is a funding mechanism to build up research capacity in the institution. Now, how do you build up research capacity? So 2 days ago, our chairman, Professor Hua, actually came, I was also trying to explain it, and then he proposed to use the term implicit research output and explicit research output, right? So if you think of FDS, FDS is a very clear, very commonly accepted type of research grant. You have a research problem, you propose an approach to address that research problem. At the end of the day, it's likely that you will have publications that talk about what solution you have come up with, and so you publish it. So publications will be a natural research output. There may be others, a book can be, but publications, scholarly outputs will be a natural research outcome from an FDS. But FDS is a grant that funds research problems, right? Now, IDS is a grant that funds research capacity. So how do we characterize research capacity? You may think about, first of all, we've seen all the self-funded institutions in the first 3 years, they submit grants for IDS to create a research office. That's a very natural thing. A research office that can support, provide support for research proposal submission and monitoring and so on. Whatever fits the context of that self-funded institution in terms of the work that needs to be done in a research office. Right? So that is an important infrastructure to support research capacity. Now, the other thing is you may think about research capacity along the lines of a strategic direction in your institution. Different institutions will have different strategic directions. And for the strategic direction that you pick for the institution, what may that strategic direction be? And how would you, I mean, you call it a research direction, probably because there is some level of critical mass of faculty in the institution with common interests. So together, I mean, again, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? If you group these colleagues together, they will make something good out of their common research interests and build up certain strength in the institution to characterize the uniqueness of the institution. So we're talking about a macro level there. Okay, so we're talking about a strategic direction so that when people talk about a particular institution, they remember, oh, this institution is very strong in this area, right? Now, if you think about that, you know, so that is a hopeful outcome of building up a strategic direction. Now, then, if that is where you want to be at in a few years' time, what do you want to do today? Well, you may need some equipment, like a platform. You may need some data, you know, like data feeds. You may need to hire, you know, you may need to hire certain people and have them work together. So how would you build up research capacity? Again, people, equipment, supporting offices, and so on, right? So the one thing I wish to emphasize is the deliverables of research capacity is a bit implicit. So to borrow our chairman's terminology. So what is the outcome? What is the outcome of research capacity that you have built up to a certain level? If you are given like $10 million, I mean, IDS grants are high, right? If you're given $10 million, what should one expect? This is public money, so what should the public expect to see as an accomplishment of the expenditure of this IDS fund? And well, maybe one of the things is, well, you have groomed a group of faculty who are now very capable in submitting FDS funds, FDS proposals. And so they are able to conduct individual and joint research. They may be one in each other's co-eyes and so forth. So that becomes, then you have explicit outcomes a few years down the road. But today, when you have built up research capacity, you have some indication, right? You have some indication, but it's not the actual publications that we're calling for. It may be a position paper. You might say, I want to build up an environmentally conscious strategic direction for my institution. But it may be a position paper. It's about work. It's about an approach, an area. Yeah. Okay. So that is the IDS, the intent of the IDS, which is different from the intent of the FDS.
Would setting up a research center be considered an implicit outcome? And will we be able to hire research staff with the funding?
Yes, but you have to distinguish between. So what we don't want to see. Let me just try to clarify. What we have seen before, and we don't think is appropriate for IDS, is if you just staple a few FDS proposals together. That's not the intent of the IDS proposal, right? So you might as well ask the colleagues to write several FDS proposals and hire research staff, right? But a research center, it needs to be supportive of a group, and it's not individual proposal. They are, of course, called research staff if they're doing research. But there is a difference between, you know, research staff that's supporting research capacity and research staff that is supporting a research problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, to set a center and then have research staff that support faculty doing related and interdisciplinary research on a particular topic.
Right.
Yeah, good evening.
yeah.
I have two related questions. The first one is about the team formation. If we are thinking about inviting overseas researchers or experts from industry to join to form a research team? Is it necessary to have collaborative projects before and with recognizable research output? Would those or normal collaboration could also be recognized or not? And the second question is about the topic. So if we are inviting overseas experts, probably we may think about to have collaboration cross-city or cross-country research to collect data from different places so that to contribute to every team member. Would this kind of work or expense be supported by the research grant?
So first of all, you pick a co-investigator to fill in expertise gaps. That's what I wish to emphasize. But for the successful conduct of a funded project, there's always a human issue in collaboration, right? So sometimes it's not that you've just filled in a name, and the name happens to be someone who is very famous in the field, and then you obtain a letter of collaboration. If you are able to obtain a letter of collaboration from someone who is who is a giant in the field, of course it's going to help your proposal if that person can fill in expertise gaps. So complement the PI's expertise in the conduct of the proposal, of the research work. And to that end, if there's already pre-existing collaboration, of course it becomes more convincing. Now your question is, if there's a lack of such pre-existing collaboration, then you might need to provide some evidence of why you think this collaboration is going to, basically it's a matter of convincing the reviewers that this will be a fruitful collaboration. And not one that is just in name, right? So that you just put in someone's name and it's not a fruitful collaboration. So if there's no pre-existing one, try to get something together, and that will be much more convincing than just, oh, I have to write a proposal, and this is a very famous person, maybe I can add his name, and he happens to be, say, oh, I don't know who you are, but I agree to help you, and then give you a letter. Well, that will be nice, but in general, that is less strong than one that has a pre-existing solid evidence of some collaboration. Right?
For the cross-country or cross-city collaboration, in this proposal, FDS, if we propose to do research in different cities and collect data or do the analysis, that could benefit the team member from different places, but would this be supported by the grant?
Yeah, so then the question is, what is the expenditure? And how would you do the data collection, right? So I don't see why it shouldn't be, but you in your project plan, you will have to spell out how you're going to do that data collection. So for example, I come from engineering. You can actually do data collection without having to be physically in a certain country. And you can certainly collaborate with international collaborators without having, for every time, of course, sometimes you might have to meet up, but sometimes we meet up in conferences, right? I think academic visits may be possible. We need to look up and you budget academic visits may be possible, but be careful about long distance travel because that's expensive. So you don't want a budget that only has very expensive travel requests, right? So there are some considerations there.
In view of time, maybe I ask if there is any more questions on FDS and RIDS. Okay.
One more.
Thank you so much.
Well, maybe we can field your question. Yeah, because it's getting late, I think. Yeah. So maybe we can field your question, offline, if that's okay. But thank you all very much, and I do wish you a successful exercise year. Yeah. So thank you.
And may I ask for your assistance, please? we have distributed the questionnaire. So when you are going to leave this lecture theatre, remember to leave the questionnaire, completed questionnaire into the questionnaire collection box. Thank you so much.